1 o'clock on the East Coast, October the 24th, the week before Thanksgiving. I know everybody's excited about that. That is the true holiday season. The Rangers play tonight, Dan. They
a
play
month before.
It's a week
You
before
said Thanksgiving.
Halloween.
It's a week before. Didn't he say Thanksgiving? Somebody
Halloween.
put that in the chat. I keep doing that to you, don't I?
Somebody said last night I said redhead.
Did you?
I don't think so.
Diaz, what did he say? He said Thanksgiving.
Week before Thanksgiving.
A week before Halloween.
Halloween.
It might be exactly a month before Thanksgiving, though.
Ish. Rangers play tonight.
Yep.
Yankees play tomorrow night.
Yep. Game
World
one.
Series starts.
What's your prediction here?
I don't want to touch the money, as they say.
Okay.
I mean, the Yankees are there. You know who's not there?
The Mets.
The Mets are not there. And you Met fans out there,
all right, we can't start off
stuck
hating.
it.
We can't
and
start
put
off
stuff
hating.
in the chat. I'm all about it. Let's go. By the way, Carter Worth today.
Yep.
He's waiting.
Of Worth charting.
Rundown. Tesla's. What are those things? Lightning bolts?
Tesla has not seen a downtick, guy.
Are those lightning bolts? Those are pretty.
Those
is that
are
Amanda?
bolts.
That's well done. It's about yields. Yeah, it is. Chart check on Homebuilders. Carter had a great call. They're bouncing today. We'll see. Audience Q&A, Dan, if we have time, which we will.
Yeah, we will. You're getting excited for Halloween. You have this little thing that you do on Fast Money when you say, OCK 31.
And then I say boo.
Yeah.
Well, because one day it was many years ago.
True that.
Mel said something about Halloween, and I went like this.
Yeah.
Boo.
All right, let's do this because
and she's like, and ever since then, it's been a bit of a gag.
Interesting day in the market, guy. The headlines pre-opening were, Tesla strong quarter like drags up the Nasdaq. Okay, it opened up. I think it was trading up when we were talking about on Fast Money last night, maybe 7-8% before the conference call. Then it really got going. Guy, you said this, and by the way, I can be a dick every once in a while. Guy is never on the Fast Money. He is about as gracious a person as you will ever see, whether it be to his co-panelists, whether it be to the guests. In the break, it's a little different sometimes. Is that fair to say? Or no?
We break each other's balls.
Yeah, we do that a little bit. I sometimes on air can be a bit of a glib asshole. There's one famous instance of that. Do you remember that guy? Maybe
when
5
you threw a piece of paper.
I flicked it at him. I flicked it at him. Okay. And Guy said, I think he gave his rundown on Tesla. He says, I think it goes back towards 260, which was the high, which is crazy just a month ago. This stock has been crazy volatile.
Well, obviously. I mean, look, again, I'm not pretending I know anything about Tesla, but what I said was, if you go back in December of 2023, December 27th, I think, stock traded 260. Then it obviously cascaded lower. Then you go back to July of this year, 260, cascaded lower. And then to your point, it was just September 27th, it was trading 260. So logic suggested on the back of that quarter, with everybody geeked up about margins, 260-ish, 263 made a lot of sense. Now, I will tell you that little gap island reversal is a very bullish formation, especially being that we traded down to the moving average and bounced. So it should get there, and it should do it in pretty short order. And here we are today. The question is, what happens if and when we do get there? Does it run out of steam? Because I saw a lot of people casting aspersions about the quarter, saying, you know what, the margins aren't what they cracked up to be. I'm just trying to figure out how to trade the stock here. So I think if you've enjoyed this run up, 260 to 265, pull the ripcord, live to trade another day.
And that's a great point. I mean, we come on here, it's real time. We're talking about how stocks are moving intraday. We give our kind of opinions. We talk about some of the things we're doing with them. Sometimes, I probably get, I probably take myself away from the here and now a little too much, because before the conference call and what I was looking at, I was like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. And I also said it hasn't even filled in that gap. Now, I did say that it's only, post-market activity. This is where all the volume comes in. So this is not, I'm sure there's a short covering aspect of this guy. I think some people are saying this was the turn. Margins have been coming down from 25% to the mid-teens, and here you are. You have this improvement. The only problem that I see is that they have made layoffs. They reduced R&D by 10%. I mean, there's a lot of things, and I know there's a lot of folks out there who thinks they're playing a little games here, but I think the guy's point about the levels and the volatility, I get it. I'm not sure you'd be buying it here, or I'd be buying it here for whatever that's worth, guys.
No, I don't. I'd be interested to see what Carter has to say. So, yeah, so that's Tesla. And again, if you go longer term chart, you'll see, I mean, even with this move, we're nowhere remotely close to the all-time high it made, I think, in the November of 2021 or thereabouts. So it's been it's been a great performer recently. It's been a huge underperformer for the better part of 3.5 years. So it really comes down to what's your time horizon on this thing.
Yeah, and just one last thing. So the stock really, it really started to get going after they were talking about a handful of things that people wanted to hear about. They wanted to hear about what margins on Cybertruck were. They wanted to hear about robotaxi. And, one of the reasons why, if you go back to that 1-year chart, you had that 10% gap that it just filled in. They had that October 10th robotaxi event. People were very disappointed. The color that they gave on this call last night, some very optimistic outlooks about when the robotaxi fleet's going to be on the road. They obviously prefaced it with regulatory issues, right? They talked about full self-driving, which is going to be essentially, to use the pun, a driver, right, of that whole thing. They need regulatory approval for that. The Model 2, this is the thing that a lot of folks wanted to hear about, a $25,000 car. He actually said in the call, they're not doing it, guy. So they're going to make their Model 3s cheaper. I can't imagine that's good for margins either. They've been buying down rates. Rates have gone down higher. So that's it. I'll just say that there was a lot of quirky things in that.
No doubt. And that we made a full screen. Is that what they call these things, with different? My God, Amanda is so on her game right now.
Yeah, she's good.
Tesla stock surges after earnings. Hard to be anything but optimistic. Well, not necessarily true, but JP Morgan says fade the Tesla pop. Earnings boost unsustainable. I think Morgan Stanley reiterated they're overweight. So as typical here in terms of Tesla, you have people on both sides of the boat. So I think the average price target somewhere around $225-ish. You see where we're trading now. I think the average rating, believe it or not, is a hold. So people really don't know how to sort of gauge this thing.
Yeah, no, it's obviously it's a very controversial stock. The other thing is, obviously, Elon, the CEO of the company, has got all in behind former President Trump. And I think a lot of the kind of predictions that he made and a lot of the potential goofiness that went on in this, he just thinks that he's not going to have any repercussions whatsoever, if that works itself out next month. All right, let's bring him in, because Carter Braxton Worth, upward charting. Carter, how are you?
Good. Watching it all, and as you are, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit about a stock that opens up 12% and then doesn't see a downtick for all day long. Now it's up 20%. This is a name that you've obviously put a lot of your charting capabilities into, and you're trading it just the way Guy kind of talked about it. What do you make of a move like this and a stock the size of this? Again, we've had a couple 10% moves over the last year. We've had a bunch of them, actually. Just look at all those gaps, but this is 20%.
Right. So there's so many. Let's talk about intraday, and you started with that, right, where it's gapped up. You see that. So the low on the day was the open, and it's worked higher consistently and reliably. What if it fades and all of a sudden it's up a fraction? So that would change the look, wouldn't it? What if it fades and closes in the red? Meaning, here we are, we're midday, 1 o'clock, 3 hours to go. So much depends on where a stock comes to close, so to speak, as they would say, on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange at 4 p.m. Right, now, this is not the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, but that's not the point. So the close is infinitely important. But if we go back to just the standard, whatever that was, 1 year or 2 year default chart, the trick here, and that's the important, is to not see Tesla, to not know that it's Tesla. If that was just a mystery chart, which people love to do because it's kind of a clickbait or whatever, it was maybe a $400 million small cap biotech, or maybe it was huge as like United Healthcare, which gapped up and down on its earnings. What about it makes it a sale? Nothing. What about it makes it a buy? Nothing. That's what a pair of twos is. That is a random set of 5 cards in your hand. How do you play that hand? I wouldn't.
I think that's fair. And I will add to this. It's already traded. I think it trades 70 million shares a day. Typically, I think it's already traded about 135 million shares. You can do the math. That's 2 times normal volume with 3 hours left. Stands to reason we'll probably trade either side of 3 times normal volume on this big move higher, which is either the start of something or the exhaustion of, what has been a pretty unbelievable move over a very short period of time. As I pointed out, Carter, those tops are pretty, everybody can see them. You go back to December, July, September, they're all right there for you to see. I guess maybe a close above 265 puts us in some new paradigm, and maybe people get excited because the moving average is starting to slope higher and that we tested it. That's really the bull case here as far as I can see, CBW.
Yeah, it's a big move to a fairly difficult level, and I wouldn't think it presses higher from here easily. Sure, can it do it, but not without a lot of backing and filling a lot of work. There's almost no short interest in Tesla for what it's worth, less than 1%, the short interest ratio. So that's something to consider as well. Again, here it is. And it's whatever duration this is a 1-year chart. Same price it was 1 year ago. It's also the same price it was 4 years ago.
No doubt. One of the things that I just find interesting about the story is that, folks, who are buying it here, they're saying, well, this is not an auto company. It's a tech company, full self-driving, robotaxi, Optimus, a handful of other things. But it really keyed off that auto gross margin, right? And that was the kind of thing that got the spark going. Our friend Doug Cass just highlights that the gap here today is equal to more than 2 times the market cap of GM. Again, maybe that's not useful. It probably is just a nice little headline, but it is what it is. Carter, so we're getting to the thick of mega cap tech earnings over the next week or so. And, sometimes, and Guy and I talked about it yesterday on Market Call, some of these early reporters and the reaction to them, they're kind of interesting. It kind of sets the tone for earnings season. I don't know if there's any real tone just yet, but let's look at like an IBM. And this is one that Guy's been pounding out the table on for a while. You have a move like this. This is not an IBM-esque move, if you will. So before Guy kind of goes through some of the stuff that he saw or took out of the call, what do you think of this move? What do you think this reaction? And again, where do you think this thing goes from here on a purely technical level?
Yeah, extended by all accounts, and that doesn't mean that it had to drop in gap, but it has. It's a full stock, and it's gapping down for what it's worth. And this is self-serving. Here's a report for subscribers on Thursday, October 10th, saying sell IBM. It was farther above its 150-day moving average at any point in 20 years. Steep, and this is what's happened, right? It's dropped and gapped. So a little bit of luck, a little bit of good timing, but now what? That's the most important thing. And remember, most people aren't short, right? If you look at the total short interest at any given time in New York Stock is 2%, right? So the broad thrust, America is long, most capital is long. So the idea is when something is steep and uncorrected, you can trim a little bit or sell calls, have some nuanced approach while still staying long, but reducing exposure. Now that it has dropped and gapped, there isn't any real level of support. And typically you get follow through, obviously, when a stock does gap up or gap down. And so we shall see. But I would still reduce my exposure if I were long IBM. And I would certainly resist any temptation to think, oh, it's cheap, let me play this for a bounce. There's just the expression, let the dust settle. People like to have this silly thing, a 3-day rule, 5-day rule. That's a personal thing. There's no rule. Yeah. But the expression that's time immemorial has nothing to do with the market. Let the dust settle. And so is that 3 days or 5? Who knows? But I don't jump in, and I would still reduce.
Yeah, Carter, really quickly, let's go back to that first slide on the report from October 10th. You have a relative strength index down there. Can you just speak to a little bit about how you use that? You talk a lot about your smoothing mechanisms, which is your 150-day moving average. And I'm just curious because the 150-day is going to be not too far away from 200, which is kind of the breakout level.
Sure. Remember, that's a price oscillator, right? And there are a lot of oscillators. There's some 130 recognized price oscillators, and that's the point. We don't really rely on them, but we include it in this report just to maybe adjust or give a little bit of sort of support for those who don't want to just focus on percent above trend, above the 150-day moving average. But this is now this is a different RSI you have there. I don't know what that is, but if you see it was making sort of all-time highs or close to it. And again, it's an oscillator, not relative strength. That's a different thing. Relative strength is relative to something else. This is an internal price oscillator relative to itself, overbought or oversold. No different than people use MACD or Bollinger Band or what have you to mark. But either way, again, a little bit of luck, a little bit of good timing. Here we have dropped and gapped it, but it was extreme, right? And I guess people said, well, maybe IBM is going to be AI now, or they have always a narrative around it. Otherwise, what else is the journalist going to say or the analyst going to say? But after a drop and gap, first thing I would say is, or before a drop and gap when you're steep, take some measures. After a drop and gap, resist the temptation to buy.
Well, I mean, you can say what you want about being lucky. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And look at it again. Go back to that slide. That's October 10th. I think within a couple days, that was the high for IBM in this move. So you can say all the things you want. Carter's work speaks for itself. And now look at this move subsequent to that. I mean, that was 2 days, I think you put that out before it made effectively an all-time high, and you see the subsequent move. So you look at the quarter, and I think people were really disappointed about the consulting business and maybe the hardware infrastructure business. And, people taking their cues from that. I will tell you, the software business was really good, obviously not good enough. And, it's not like it's a cheap stock in this environment. It's probably trades north of a market multiple. I don't necessarily know if it's deserved of that. If it starts to get the AI numbers up, then maybe we can put a different multiple on it. But Carter's right. I mean, steep and uncorrected. Here we are now. Dan mentioned $200. If you go to the next slide, you'll start to see where the 150-day moving average comes in. I don't know if it necessarily gets there, but I think, a move back down to sort of 200 to 205, given what we just saw, makes sense. And that gets us back to where we were a month or so ago, Dan.
Yeah, no doubt. So interesting work being done here, both on a fundamental standpoint, Guy, from you, and a technical from our main man, Carter. Carter, here's one we wanted to pull up today. The stock gapped up. It was up a lot more. It's come in a bit, and you just kind of used that sort of reference and a couple of those other names we're just talking about. Let's look at UPS for a second here. So this stock has been a big underperformer relative to FedEx. You see a handful of, or at least two, big gaps lower. There's a few more big moves lower. When you see a move like this, it gapped above that declining 150-day. And there we are. We're just kind of like just above it now. You're giving back a lot of that strength.
Mm-hmm.
What's that look like to you?
Right. Well, so it's the same thing as a Tesla in reverse, but Tesla, let's say UPS are at the high of the day, right? Intraday action is very important, and it is all important, but not as important at any point until where it closes, right? Because in principle, what a stock is worth, all things held equal, is exactly where it's closed, the floor of New York Stock Exchange, as the expression goes. So this is not good action. One could say, well, it's up on a percentage base. It's a big move. But it's the fact that it was there wasn't any follow through. There was exhaustion intraday. People stopped buying it, or that the initial reaction was so euphoric that it was already overdone. But in and of itself, is it a bullish day or a bearish day? It's up. Is that green? That's bullish, but it's faded so much. Is that bearish? I would just stay away from it because it's such a weak stock. It's been in the downtrend. I just wouldn't fool with it.
So this is a static chart. Man, if you could put up a longer term chart of the same duration and you go back to February, I believe, of 2022, if I'm not mistaken, when the stock was trading, I don't know, probably $210. I mean, you can draw a trend line using that as your first point. The second point probably comes in April of 2023-ish. And now the third point is probably where we traded today. Look at what I just did there, Dan. I mean, I do that in my sleep, some of this stuff. So we probably, I guess we got close today, but you see that downtrend line has not been at all been breached. So, maybe there's a little more gas in the tank here to the upside, but it's still been in a pretty significant downtrend for a pretty prolonged period of time.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, listen, and we've been spending a lot of time on FedEx and some of the things that they've done. Guy, you were saying for a while, as that stock was in a multi-year downtrend, that a lot of their issues seem to be self-inflicted. Maybe they fixed some of that stuff there and obviously made it back towards those 52-week highs. Maybe this is called a consolidation, but it's also been pretty volatile. Carter, before we get to your ITB trade idea here, or at least the work that you're doing, let's look at yields. We spent a lot of time on yields these days. We really prefer talking about stocks, but they're one of the main drivers. The volatility in yields is something that, for the most part, when the Fed funds was going higher in 2022. Stocks were going the opposite way here, but it seemed to be in much of 2023 with yields stuck at those higher levels, or at least above 4%. Stocks did not seem to mind. Stocks have not seemed to mind for the better part of this year. So we had that 50 basis point cut. We know that the 2-year is obviously much more closely tied to the Fed funds. But look at this right here. So we have the 10-year. It got back to this level, flattened kind of 150-day here. I think that yields to the downside on both the 2s and the 10s, they got ahead of that rate cutting cycle. And now it seems like there's less likely of a chance of a cycle. Yet the CME FedWatch tool is pricing like a 90% probability of a 25 basis point cut in November and like a 70 guy of a 25 basis point in December. So who's got it wrong, Carter, when you're just looking at the charts here?
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing of those models. They change so quickly, and it's always typically after the fact. But if we just stick with the basic process of observing price action or bars on a page like this, if it were a small cap stock or big cap or biotech or software or whatever, I would characterize it as a big move to a difficult level. There's a lot of overhead supply here. My hunch is to buy TLT, to buy bonds.
Yeah, and if you look at TLT, we had Katie Stockton on Fast Money Tuesday night, I believe, and she thought for a trade, TLT on the long side made sense. And if you look where we just traded down to, we basically traded down to the July-ish level of support. Look where we traded down in July. Look at the subsequent bounce in TLT, and now look at the sell-off again. So, yeah, Amanda can throw that up. So there you go. I mean, it makes a little bit of sense in terms of, maybe buy this for a trade to TLT. I will say, Dan, I'm not going to back away. I still think yields are going higher. I'm in the sort of the Paul Tudor Jones camp and the Stan Druckenmiller camp for a myriad of different reasons, and it does actually make sense. However, you can trade around this for sure, and I think that's what we're seeing today.
It's a pretty good camp to be in.
Well,
and then the other thing, I'll just say, there's a lot of sectors in the S&P that are moving around on this. Carter, you want to take a look at the ITB, that is the iShares US Home Construction ETF. And it is interesting, early in the week, we kind of focused on some of the weakness that we were seeing in the Homebuilders, the XHB, and a lot of the components in there relative to the rates moving higher. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in ITB.
Yeah, a lot of the home builders are up today, but what's important is that this is showing some day-to-day slippage. And let's try to depict that. This is, of course, a chart with no lines, and we flash those lines. There have been three distinct advances, and well, they're different a little bit in terms of magnitude and duration. The risk is that we're breaking, and you can see the arrows. Let's flash the arrows like that. No vacancy sign in the motel there. Point being, have we broken trend ever so slightly? Now, the next way to draw the chart is to take away those and look at those two drops. They're absolutely identical in terms of duration, 68 sessions and 67 sessions. One's almost 17%, one's 21%, and they weren't random where they stopped. Let's put in the trend line. Okay, so simply, were we to be now the beginning of another, last chart, we would take us down some 15%, and that's normal. I mean, people, get all worked up about that. Oh my God, what? How can you 50? It's just what a normal pullback, drop, decline, drawdown, sell-off correction is. It's perfectly reasonable. Now, that's my thinking. We shall see.
If you look at the construction of the ITB, 40% of the ETF are four stocks: DR Horton, Lennar, NVR Corp, a name we don't talk about, but Carter does, and then Pulte. And if you look at it, 15% of it is DHI. So these home builders, if you look over the last couple of days, and Carter talked about the individual names as well, you had a pretty dramatic move in some of these home builders to the downside. They're bouncing a little bit today, but logic suggests, especially given what we've talked about with rates and stuff, I mean, they've had an unprecedented run to the upside. They're going to give stuff back, and they're still in an uptrend line. So you could see a back and fill to the trend line very easily here, Dan.
Yeah. And just maybe Amanda can pull up like a 6-month chart here. And Carter, I know that you're making, this is not a very short-term idea. It could get there to your uptrend line maybe quicker than some people might expect. I just think on a very short-term basis, and I'm just curious for your quick take. So you had two big volume days lower, straight lower. You had yesterday where it closed, above the close from 2 days ago, right? From 3 days. 3 days ago. And now you have this little pattern here. And I like these little patterns. Like I could see this thing maybe getting back towards 125 as a short-term trade. And again, that might not change your mind whatsoever about the direction of the arrow that you pointed. Just curious on a very short-term basis when you see.
Yeah, that's sort of I would say on noble suddenly the very short-term patterns are clear. And like, wow, we could catch this. This could, but it's the drop in gap and now a bit of consolidating for 2 days, sort of in the middle of the range of the day, which the drop in gap occurred. Perhaps a little bit of a gap fill. It nudges up towards, again, 124.80, 124.90. The bigger question, and hard to know, is this intermediate advance from the July low of 95 to 130, which is not nothing. Is it breaking trend? Is it under pressure? And that's my hunch.
Couple of questions on the gold front, one from Steve Z and another one from Edward Morgan, Carter, directed at you. Can Carter comment on gold, silver, and the sell-off in the miners today, the sell-off that he's talking about, obviously the miners in general, but Newmont Mining, man, if you want to throw a chart up, I mean, that is, I think it's down 15.15% today on what was a pretty mundane quarter, at least when I saw it originally. Obviously, the market thinks something else. Now, maybe it's due in part to this sort of move we've had lower left to upper right and giving some of it back. But with that said, this is sort of this came out of left field in my at least the way I look at things. I will say gold's higher on the day. It makes sense. I guess maybe we're doing a little bit of a pullback, but of this magnitude, Carter, I didn't see this one coming.
Yeah, for instance, Newmont's the biggest, right, in terms of market cap at 50. Look at AEM, pull that up. That's the second biggest, AEM.
That's
and
the and Mike by the way.
Yeah, it hasn't moved at all today. So this is clearly idiosyncratic. It's specific to Newmont. I guess they had results out. But if you look at the general chart, if you will, of gold, of silver, of the gold miners, GDX, GDXJ, there is nothing to say other than stay long, be long.
Yeah, I agree. No, listen, I agree with you. Real quick, pull up a longer-term chart of AEM. You'll see where we traded up to today. By the way, it made a new 52-week high today. This is the same levels we saw 14 years ago, if you want to go way back, and the same levels in AEM that we saw in 2020, with not so far back. So this 89-ish, let's just call it 90 for shits and giggles. I mean, you can see what I'm looking at here, Dan. This is major resistance. So you had a big move up today. It's given some of it back. It's absolutely worth watching for the rest of the day.
No doubt. Carter, before we let you go, there's another question. This is from Gary Webb. Gary, you're with us a lot here. We appreciate the question here. CBW, thoughts on SMH seemingly underperforming the broader market. Now, it's interesting, just when we talk about construction, NVIDIA is 22.5% of this thing. Taiwan Semi is at nearly 14%. So you see that. But then when you pull up, maybe they can pull up the chart really quickly here. NVIDIA is obviously still very near its all-time highs. It broke out there a little bit. And then Taiwan Semi has been acting pretty well. So that only leads me to believe, Carter, that there's above of these other components, Broadcom, AMD, and that Broadcom acts pretty well, that aren't pulling their own weight right now.
So to that very point, the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, which obviously is influenced because it's market cap weighted, is up 23% year to date. The equal weight semiconductor index is up 3.8. 23 versus 3.8. 3.8 in a stock market that's been a lot better. There's the story, right? So you have just a few champions. You got a few Babe Ruths here, LeBron James and Mike Tyson, whoever they are, who are driving the results for the team, but the rest of the constituents are not playing well.
Couple things. Chris L saying, and this, I like this a lot. Pull this up, Amanda. Carter, unbreak my chart, Worth. That's just so good. And then Chris L also says, Guy, did you see that Rangers player light up Canadian dude on the blue line the other day? Now, I will tell you, of course I did, because I watch the Rangers every night. That was Jacob Trouba just basically unloading on Justin Barron. Here you go, Justin, if you're watching, he may be. You got to skate with your friggin' head up, pal. Okay, this isn't pee-wee hockey. And that's what Trouba did, was a clean hit. Didn't lead with his elbow, led with his shoulder, didn't hit him in the head. He hit him in the shoulder, and he basically sent the guy into no man's land. As we used to say, we hit him so hard it hurt his family. Now, of course, in today's NHL, it means somebody's got to drop the gloves, and Trouba then has to fight somebody. It's a joke. But yes, I saw it.
Yes, I know the joke. You just think because his head was down.
No, I mean, it's a clean hit. It's a
what about head hunting? Can I take you back to 1993, Pierre Turgeon and the Dale Hunter hit?
Yeah, that was a dirty hit.
That was a very dirty hit. That's
much.
Where I was
it's
going
much
with.
Different.
Yeah,
I mean, much different. I mean, Dale Hunter was a hoodlum.
Yeah, he was a hoodlum.
Maybe
Trouba, Jacob can find that.
I mean, people don't like Trouba. Brutal. If Trouba plays 20 years ago, nobody's saying a word. Yeah. Trouba in today's hockey, it's like OMG.
See, here's the thing. Carter's not usually here for our BS.
Sorry, Carter.
But
no, it's all right.
We go to Rangers games together. I think we went to 2 or 3 together.
We have. It's all good. I love it.
And we're planning one for the near future here.
Yes, we're due.
Box, probably.
No, we're not.
Eating like those.
No, regular seats.
You know what? Guy thinks that
we
just do it in a certain way. All right, CBW, we really appreciate you being here.
Hey,
we're going to see you tonight.
See you about 4 hours. That's right.
Keep the hair. Yeah. Looks great.
Keep the hair.
This is from T-Bug. Where does he see Viking Therapeutics going from here?
Ooh. Ooh.
Well, if you watch Fast Money, which clearly you do, I mean, we've talked about this stock now for quite some time. Pull this sucker up, Amanda. It comes out VKTX, and it's been on a bit of a run here. I've said it. I rarely say this about stocks. I think this company is going to be acquired. I don't know who the acquirer is going to be. I have my thoughts. Doesn't matter. But yeah, the earnings surprise people, and I think this stock is in play here.
You
Dan.
don't know this acquirer.
I don't
You
know this. I don't know what he does.
I got
That's a
you
great
there.
scene.
Yeah.
You know why that's a great scene? Because Michael is so
Corleone. That would be Michael
cold-blooded.
Corleone. Yeah.
And the guy is sitting right there.
Right.
And then Kay puts her hand out and
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, Kay was pissed off at Michael.
No, it wasn't Kay. It was
not Kay. Sorry. Yeah. His sister was pissed off at Michael because Michael whacked her husband, Carlo.
Yeah.
Carlo had it
coming. He did have it coming to him. He gave him a ticket. Carlo literally thought he was going to Vegas. Yeah. Didn't he?
Yeah. Carlo should have known better.
He should have known better.
He gave him a drink. Then he took the drink away. Carlo went in for a hug. Michael's like, get away from me.
Get out of here. What else
Michael,
we got? Do we have a couple
and
more
then,
here?
by the way, and then Tessio, if you remember, can you get me off the hook, Tom, for old time's sake? Can't do it, Sally. We say that all the time. Can't do it, Sally.
Yeah.
Does the panel really, Chris L? I mean, are you fucking kidding me?
The panel.
Does the panel think JP Morgan can break and hold 225 this year or not so much? Well, I don't know who the panel is, but I will speak for myself. JP Morgan is a very expensive stock. Price to book, price to tangible book. It has gotten way ahead of itself here. And if you think about it, just my opinion, yes, they are the best bank. Yes, they win when other banks fail, but it doesn't mean they're not expensive at these levels, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a tough one here. It's been a great stock. And so I see what you see. You see that move back up to the prior highs. You see the consolidation. That move, that really big move was after its earnings, guys. So folks did like what they had to say. I think if you go back to, you've made this point on many occasions over the last few months, Jamie Dimon was pretty specific about they are not buying a whole heck of a lot of their stock back at those kind of 220 levels, that sort of thing. So, at the end of the day, if he thinks it's expensive, which you've been saying, it probably is expensive. And so I don't know what the next catalyst would be for the stock to break out in a meaningful way. And if anything, over the last few months, it really has been consolidating. Matthew
Stivic, pull this thing up. Now, this is not Michael Stivic. Michael Stivic was who?
I don't know.
Yeah, you do. Pull this up.
Michael Stivic.
Come on. Doug Cass is going to email you in about 30 seconds.
Uh-oh.
You don't really know who Michael Stivic is?
I'm literally at a loss.
I watch this probably 3 or 4 times a week on one of those like old timers channels.
Yeah.
All in the Family.
Oh yeah.
Michael Stivic was Rob Reiner.
He was Meathead.
Well, I don't say that.
All right, but hold on.
I don't say that.
Okay, but that's what Archie Bunker called him, Meathead.
Yeah.
So the fact that I could immediately do that, I knew who Meathead is.
Yeah, but
Rob Reiner.
Michael Stivic is.
Rod Reiner. I love Rob Reiner. He kills.
Well, you like him because
we don't have to get into it. I love that show.
Yeah,
and I think
On the Family.
He also was the
brilliant.
director of a bunch of amazing movies.
Spinal Tap.
Yes.
And he was
making another
Spinal
one.
Tap.
Didn't he
Can't
also?
wait.
I think he also directed Stand By Me. Is that true?
By the way, so he says, Michael Stivic, not Matthew Stivic, says, a risk reversal without a guy rant is like a day without sand at the beach. I agree with that.
Thank you, Michael.
And there's certain things that like I can be in the best mood and somebody says one thing, or like I think about like, where's Hockman? He knows what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's the littlest thing that can set me off.
Oh,
just tipped his cap.
Wait, by the
way,
he did do The Princess Bride, which is considered
Great
not
movie.
your really.
Great movie.
I would not have suggested.
Oh no, it's a great movie.
Okay.
Too Blave.
Okay. Wow. Stand By Me, obviously. And here's another one. This is I didn't like When Harry Met Sally, not my jam.
Yeah,
I don't like
whatever.
rom-coms. A Few Good Men. It's one of the best
Good Men.
movies of the last
By the way,
30 years.
Say what you want about Jack Nicholson.
He was amazing.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about him and he's the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Tom Cruise, good looking. Demi Moore, like blah,
Here's
blah,
one.
blah.
Misery with your boy Sonny.
They broke his ankles.
Oh my God, that was the worst.
That was crazy.
I mean,
that's
like,
a Stephen
That's
King
why
book,
you
I think.
never want to get lost in the woods and have some old lady.
Yeah, I mean, why would you?
Yeah.
I mean, he should have. I don't know what he was thinking.
Yeah.
But like, she gets the big hammer and breaks his effing ankles.
I think Rob Reiner, to be honest with you, is like one of the unsung directors, actors of the last. He was funny in Spinal Tap too. He was
bit part.
I know.
Spinal Tap, by the way, not that anybody gives a shit.
I don't.
But I will.
Okay.
No. So I was dating. I met a girl my sophomore year in college, and we started dating. I think it was now my junior year, and we rented at our local whatever Tower Records or
Blockbuster probably.
This is Spinal Tap, and we watched it.
Beta or
VHS.
Yeah.
The thing where you're not allowed to rewind it in the machine.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You couldn't rewind the tapes in your because
it would.
So people would sell you like they had these little side gadgets that you put the tape in and rewind. It's a dumb. I mean, think about that.
Yeah, but by the 80s, I know this was in the 70s. By the 80s,
was in the 80s.
By the 80s, Blockbuster used to put stickers on them and said, "Be kind, rewind."
Yeah.
And sometimes they would charge you if you did not.
Can you
rewind
imagine?
It. All right, where were we going with the story?
Well, so I'm watching This is Spinal Tap with my roommates and my then girlfriend. And 20 minutes in, she got up and walked. She didn't want to watch it anymore.
Stupid. And you dumped her the next.
No, I didn't.
Oh,
no, I should have. In retrospect, because I mean seriously, that movie is effing hysterical.
Yeah.
I mean, you want me to start singing Spinal Tap songs?
No.
I mean, I will tell you, Big Bottom, talk about mud flaps. My Girl's Got 'Em. I mean, it's genius.
It's genius.
It really is genius.
I assume
they had an album that they called Shark Sandwich, and you know what the critics said about it?
They said
it's
horrible.
A shit sandwich.
Oh man, that's funny.
It's true.
Do you think he wrote that? Did Christopher Guest write that?
They all were involved.
Yeah.
They're all geniuses.
Okay. Should we
leave?
Take one more question.
Do you have one?
Let's get out of here. We probably do.
Citizen Dan, that's you. Need the chart master who's gone, but Dan's opinion on Intel.
Good one.
All right, Intel. Listen,
you give us your 411 on the story.
No, I mean it's $22 stock. The story. What's the story? The story is what I've thought for a while. It's a homeland security play, but it has not proven to be the case in terms of the way the stock performs. But, you think about it, you're going to have some activists get involved in this thing. Just anything incrementally better on the frickin' margins, and this stock should go from, where's the trade, 22 to 28, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it fills a gap, and percentage-wise, that is a big deal. It's a 30% move.
I thought very interesting, and you and I talked about it, I think on the Set of Fast Money when the headline came out. Qualcomm said that they are not going to at the moment consider buying Intel until they have more clarity after the election, and obviously regulatory stuff is a big part here. We talked about it at the time. There's not a lot of overlap from a product standpoint. Intel is going to be basically building fabs. That's where you make the chips. And that's by, I think they got 10 billion or something like that from the IRA. So that was the CHIPS Act, I guess. And so you say to yourself, all right, Qualcomm, they're fabless, meaning they don't own. It would make sense. Qualcomm is very well embedded in smartphones. They're making a big push into AI-powered PCs, laptops and the like here. So Intel trying to make a bigger push into, data center and like. So it could be interesting. I think that stock, I'll just tell you this, I think it's taken out $35, guy.
George Harrison wrote a song, When We Were Fab.
Yeah.
And that was about, obviously, his time with the Beatles.
And by the way, Guy thinks that George Harrison is probably the most talented Beatle, or was the most talented.
Well,
Beatle.
It's interesting. Yes, I thought that for the longest time. And then I watched that documentary that George Jackson or Al Jackson or whatever Jackson guy, the guy
Jackson
that did
5.
the movie. No, the guy that did the movies with that everybody's kid, the same movies.
The Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I heard that was a great series, by the way.
It was.
Yeah.
But then you realize that, Harrison was a genius, but it was McCartney really was a genius.
Yeah.
By the way, those Lord of the Ring movies, are you fucking kidding me?
For you.
They're the same. It's the
they
same
are
movie.
The same movie for 10 hours.
Bill knows.
Straight. Yeah.
It's the same effing thing. I mean, if it wasn't for Viggo Mortensen
He's good.
and Liv Tyler, who I liked back in the day, honest to God,
it's horrible.
Some genius should come in and do like a mashup of, what is that you called it? Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
And what's the one with the kids with the wands?
That's the Harry Potter.
Mash those fuckers up. 13, 14 hours of movies and just you wouldn't know the difference.
You know what?
You wouldn't know the difference.
I'll bet you on the YouTube.
The Harry Potter, stop. The Harry Potter movies suck.
You know what they call it? A supercut. I'll bet you.
A what?
A supercut. I'll
Bill's
bet
making
you
fun of me.
somebody's taken the 3 Lord of the Rings and mashed it into like 2 hours.
But it's a joke. The Harry Potter movies, the kids just get older. They walk around with wands. The one guy gets mad at his friend. What's her name?
Hermione.
Hermione, right? The Harry Potter guy.
I like those motion pictures. By the way,
no, they
if
suck.
Somebody
and
can
the books, they all suck.
So, Bill, have you ever seen this? There's an SNL skit where they all come back from summer break to wherever Doldemore or whatever the heck the school is, and Hermione's changed, and so
She's changed.
She's changed after coming back.
Why? By the way, why is she dating the redheaded guy?
That it didn't make.
No,
any
I mean
sense.
it doesn't make.
You
any...
got redheaded in your head right now. Hey, Bill.
No, but the
Jacob,
dude's a redhead.
Find the SNL.
I mean, she could have done a lot better than the redhead.
Put it in the
guy.
show notes.
Like there was, like I like the white haired kid, the bad guy from.
How do you know these
Zagots?
movies? I've never.
What house was he in?
I have no idea.
The white. Help me out, man. To get my. You know the kid. The kid was a bad guy. He was like had all. He was like a towhead. Up. Hold on. Timmy's texting me. The nerd. That nerd guy going to trigger the nerds by asking why to throw the ring into the ocean or fly it with the. What does that even mean? Guy going to trigger the nerds by asking why they didn't just throw the ring into the ocean or fly it with the. What the fuck is he talking about?
Really quickly before we move
Seriously,
on.
what is he talking? That's Jacob.
Before we move on,
people know way too much about these things.
Led Zeppelin.
What about them?
They seem to have some sort of connection,
they have connection with J.R. Tolkien. No question about it.
Do you want to give
some of their songs? There's some lyrics.
Yeah.
In the darkest depths of Mordor, I met a girl so fair. Right, but Golub and the evil one. Gollum. Isn't it Golub?
That's Karen's husband. Is Golub? Lawrence Golub.
You know, I always thought it was the same thing. Golub and looked up and yes.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a bunch of references.
You know who else likes the Lord of the Rings and all that stuff? Stephen Colbert.
Yeah,
like
I love Colbert. He's got encyclopedic knowledge of the movies. He can quote stuff, but really from the books actually.
Yeah, that's problematic.
I love that guy.
What else? So you want to talk about Led Zeppelin or no? You just brought it. No. You just brought him up just to bring him up.
We love Led Zeppelin.
No, but honest to God, I've had to sit through them. Like my youngest son, all my kids do this to torture me.
Yeah,
like they'll literally say, "Okay, we got to watch every effing Harry Potter movie over like Christmas break,"
and
it's torture. They know they're
about
torturing
Percy
me.
Jackson,
huh?
Have they looked at the Percy Jackson? It's like a bear market Harry Potter.
I know this Percy Jackson because there are books about him.
Yeah.
And my son Timmy reads the books. I think I've seen, what do they call that guy? Percy Jackson. No, but there's like Percy Jackson and
there's a
like invisible sword or something. I don't fucking know. No, but the Lord of the Rings stuff. I'd rather fucking watch Lord of the Flies than Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
What about those Jack Sparrow movies?
What?
The Pirates of the Caribbean? Again,
that's the Johnny Depp. They're all the same.
What about the Fast and the Furious? There's 10 of them.
Yeah, no.
I
like the guy that unfortunately got killed in a car crash.
Oh, yeah, he was good.
And Vin Diesel is great.
Yeah, I like Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel is great. There's a movie Triple X that he was very good at.
You know what? I'm going to tell you this right now. That came out in 2002. And I looked at my friend Cece, who you know, and I said this to him after that movie. I said, Vin Diesel is going to be one of the highest grossing actors of all time. And oddly, he doesn't get put on the critics list, but those movies have made so much money.
Vin Diesel in Boiler Room.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? We know a couple
so
people.
So Adam B says, Amanda, do something. That's amazing.
We know people that worked at JT.
Adam B.
Don't we know people that worked at JT Marlin?
Oh, you loved Boiler Room, didn't you?
I love that
he was
movie.
in Boiler, and so was Ben Affleck. They were great.
Ben Affleck in Boiler Room.
All right, so this is happening a little bit, people, because we don't do market call on Fridays. We're just trying to get a few things out.
By the way.
Yeah.
We're up almost to 93,000 now on the YouTube channel.
Follow us, us. Yeah, the whole jam.
All you got to do is, it doesn't cost you a thing.
Guy is not going to be happy if we get to deck 31 and we are not over 100,000.
I'll rip some people.
You will not be happy. And by the way, guys, can we get some stuff ready? December 18th is Guy Adami's birthday. He shares a birthday the same exact day with Brad Pitt. Same exact year, not just the same exact. Look at, and this guy, you got it going on.
Now, Brad Pitt's a good looking man.
Yeah.
No, but you should, Amanda will put this in the show notes. Amanda hates me right now. You should go to your Google machine and look who was born on December 18th. Do it right now.
Okay.
Keith Richards, December 18th, 1943.
Birthday.
He's 20 years older than I am. Kiefer Sutherland.
All right, you ready?
Christina Aguilera. Katie Holmes. I can go on and on here.
Billie Eilish.
A quintessential talent.
Keith Richards is probably the biggest one other than Brad Pitt.
Steven Spielberg. Keep going.
Yeah.
Ray Liotta.
Ravi Patel. Who's Ravi Patel?
I have no idea.
Leonard Maltin.
Well, that's lame.
Yeah.
Charles Oakley.
Do you know I've never looked at mine? You want to do this?
I'm sure people are thrilled right now.
Sub 20. All right, you ready?
Go.
Sophia Loren.
Big fan.
Ooh, I like this guy, John Berthal. He's an actor. He was in
Lord of the
We
Rings?
Own This Town. You would love this limited series. It was by the guy who did The Wire and Homicide.
You know, it was a great movie.
Great.
The Town was a great movie.
Dude, this is weird. George R.R. Martin. Now, you're not a fan of the Game of Thrones. I'm a huge fan of the Game of Thrones. He created those. He and I share a birthday.
Let me created it.
He's like the writer of them all.
That's another, that whole Game of Thrones thing freaks me out.
Oh, I love him.
I mean, it's another just
I
dumb.
got a lot of time for that. Red Auerbach on my birthday. That's pretty cool. That's about it. That's all.
Not a big birthday.
Guy
though.
Lafleur.
Guy Lafleur. It's not Guy Lafleur.
But that's
My
your
God.
guy, and that's
I'm
why
Guy.
some of the folks call you Guy on the Fast Money.
But in French Canadians, it's Guy.
Okay.
Guy Lafleur.
Okay.
Played for the Montreal Canadiens.
Right.
Probably won 5 or 6 Stanley
Did somebody
Cups.
just do a number on the Canadians the other night?
Rangers did kick their ass
5-2.
in Montreal.
5-2.
7-2.
Was it really?
Sure.
Last
Go
time I
back and
looked, it
look.
was 5-2.
Yeah, they scored too late.
What, when they pulled the goalie?
They didn't pull the fucking goalie. They might as well. Didn't make a difference. Guy was a sieve. Right, Bill?
He was a sieve. All right. So
Amanda,
note,
I'm sorry, Amanda.
yeah. That was fun though. We like you getting off, and I think Adam B. You're right, Adam B. But you know,
No, it's like I'm fine.
Would you rather see this at a guy in Fast Money? And that's why. Look, that's how we started this thing. I can be a dick on air. You're not a dick on air. So there's something going on right here on Market Call.
Who was I?
You get people fired up.
Oh, I'm not being a
The
dick.
Mets fans.
I don't give a shit about the Met fans.
Well, there you go. You're being a dick.
No, I'm being honest.
We have a
with
lot
you.
of our viewers are probably
good for that. They're, you know what? I respect that. I have no issue with that at all. But I mean, honestly,
yeah.
Shea State, you see what they have: hit the bowl, win a steak. I mean, it's Bush League shit. It's like a Kevin Costner movie. They have the city bridge. I mean, come on. It's embarrassing.
For all the food and the beer.
It's embarrassing. And then that apple that comes out when they hit a home, it's stop.
Yeah.
And then they have mascots. I mean, what are you, fucking 9 years old?
Yeah.
It's a Bush League. And the Met
mascot,
fans are all geeked up now. Oh, look at the season we had. Let me tell you something. When you're 75 and 87 next year, which is going to happen, don't come crying to me.
Somebody write that down, people.
Write it down. Write it down
Clock
right
a
now.
Ticket. Remember we
Clock
used to
a
say
ticket.
clock a ticket.
Pete Alonso, you won't be seeing him no more. The only time you see Alonso at Shea next year is when he comes in as a member of the Cubs, just so we understand each other.
So here's a little inside baseball here, people. So Tim Seymour,
He's a huge Met fan.
Huge Met fan. Guy is obviously a huge
Yankee fan.
So from probably about like February to just last week, these guys are going back and forth pre-show
100%.
in the break. Now, here's a little conundrum you guys have.
I don't say a word now.
No. He is okay.
He's going to root for the Yankees.
No, he's a Rangers fan.
Yeah, he is.
He's a Giants fan.
Yes, he is.
And he's also a Knicks
Yes,
fan.
he is.
And so you guys have no beef.
With
Right
that,
after
no, we have
baseball
no beef.
season, right up
We have-
until
we have
spring
no
training,
beef.
no beef.
No beef at all.
Yeah.
No, we're aligned when it comes
And
to
it's very
those
funny, by
sports.
the way, to hear these guys go back and
Yeah,
forth.
no, it is pretty
it's
amusing.
good.
No, I listen, I'll be flat out tell you, if I can't root for the Mets under any circumstance.
None.
I'll say it again.
I know.
Bill Hockman thinks I'm making this up. I'm not.
Not at all.
You know, they play these interleague games,
Yeah.
right? Means the American League,
Every
which is
team
dumb.
plays every team now.
But let's just say, for example, and I've said this before, there might be new people tuning in or tuning out right
Why
now.
would there be?
But if the Mets had a 3-game set at
Mhm.
the end of the year with the Red Sox,
Yep.
Mets, Red Sox.
This is insane.
It's
people.
not
I'm just gonna
insane.
tell
I
you
mean this
Okay, go ahead.
sincerely. And in order for the Yankees, the team that I root for, to make the playoffs, the Mets needed to beat the Red Sox one time out of the 3.
It's insane.
Only one time.
Insane.
Who am I rooting for in
You're-
all 3 games?
Red Sox.
100%.
It's bizarre.
They're not. I'll say it again. The Mets could play the Red Chinese national team, and I'd root for the friggin' Red Chinese. I'm just
Do you
telling
think they
you.
have baseball in China?
Yeah, I think so. No,
I don't know.
I don't know how would
They
I
have it in Japan, obviously.
What is this? Safari prevents trackers from following. What the hell does that mean?
I don't know.
What
Hey,
a
and
tracker?
listen,
Like
we
that
really
CBS
appreciate
show.
Carter Braxton working
I
on
gotta
the
go.
show.
Sorry.
Go follow us,
Hold on a second.
Market Matrix in the podcast store. It's a great little rundown. We put it together. It's read by Brunson. You'll love it. It comes out every day right after the close. Obviously, follow us. If you're watching this right now, and probably
You're
lost
a
everybody,
diehard.
follow us in the YouTube, follow our YouTube channel. That's Risk Reversal Media.
We're not back tomorrow.
No, we'll see you guys. Well, we have a great On the Tape podcast that is dropping tomorrow morning. Guy and I are going to record some stuff that's not going to be the same stuff you hear right now. It's going to be our A block. We have Stuart Sopp. He and I had a great conversation. We went deep into consumer finance, what they're seeing as far as the consumer's concerned, what the banks had to say about them, what the credit card companies had to say about them. So good read on that. We talk rates. We talk the dollar. We talk a little Bitcoin. So check it out, people. Thanks for being here on the Market Call today. Guy and Tommy, you got it all out of your system, but check us out on Fast Money later today, people. Too. All right. Thanks, everyone.